Here are 4 true encounters that when I first read, they genuinely freaked me out, so I wanted to share. All the original links are in the description. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically. Though I have been deer hunting and I've been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving, in my state, it's illegal to hunt most large animals with a night or a thermal vision camera, the only exception being boars and coyotes. I'd been saving for a night vision scope for over a year, mostly with fun money. I took it to a range and sighted it in. There was an area that was peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was easily accessible with my truck, with easy to find spots that I could set up in that overlooked a large, easy to navigate clearing. The night started uneventful, mostly me tinkering with my new toy, flipping through the settings. I had spotted multiple deer that night, but like I said earlier, my current setup wasn't legal for hunting deer. I decided to move spots, and while it wasn't much better than my first spot, it gave me a new angle to try out my night scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. This spot doesn't have any animal activity at all. No rabbits or owls. The deer that I'd seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. Why was this pocket of land so dead at night, but active in the day? I'd set up around 10 PM and it was about 2 AM when I started to think about packing up. Maybe setting up a target before I left and taking some practice shots. But then, I heard a crunch come from the direction I came from before. I panned my scope over and saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly night vision, it's a thermal scope, kind of like a black and white version of what you see in the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a little. I remember jolting a little when I saw that it wasn't really a bear, it was a man, because he was so low and hunched over. I thought it was just a young bear. Is it a game warden? It couldn't be, because I would have seen the lights from his car from where I was sitting. I was 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sight and noticed. This man was completely naked. No shoes, no clothes, nothing. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like a squirrel or something. He was twitchy and grabbing at the foliage, sniffing around, and palming the tree. Was that my tree? The one I'd been leaning against earlier? The thought terrified me. Could he smell me? Then he did something I still have nightmares about today. He squatted, placed his hands in the dirt between his feet, and stared up like a dog mid-howl. And I heard it, a voice coming from that direction, a very compelling female voice. "Help, I'm lost!" There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained at the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything I'd been taught about firearms. Were they lost? Was this just some guy who went crazy out here? And why was his voice so feminine? "Help, please, I can't walk," the voice called out. That's when I called bullshit. Not only could he walk, but he was traversing the land so good I thought he was a bear. This is just a trap. This guy's trying to lure me in with the damsel in distress routine. Luckily, the lack of activity before this had caused me to pack up most of my stuff already. I think I might have left behind a hat or a sitting pad, but at that moment, I didn't really give a shit. I took my eyes off him for one moment to get my pack on. I buckled my chest strap and scrambled for my rifle. To my horror, he was in the same position, but his face was staring in my direction. And I swear, I saw a smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes animals' eyes appear white. How the hell had he heard me get up and put my gear on? He must have been easily 150 yards away. "Fuck off!" I screamed in that direction. He stood upright and it hit me how tall and skinny he was. Easily 6 foot and very lean. He took a couple of long strides in my direction, and I instinctively sent a round sailing above his head into the tree line. He was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened me, so what do? Call the cops? I was unwilling and not ready to shoot someone, but then he stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours. "This next one will fuck you up, go away," I said. He stayed on all fours, but this time I had my sights directly on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass, like a big cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling, and I know my voice had cracked in that last warning. I was terrified. That standoff only lasted about a minute or two. Maybe even less, but it felt like forever. In an instant, he bolted left towards the tree line opposite the road. So much for not being able to walk, I couldn't even keep my scope on him, that's how fast he was running. He disappeared into the bush, and I sent another round sailing at him. I racked another round and tried to pocket that mag and swap for a fresh one, but I dropped it and I didn't even bother looking for it. I wasn't far from my truck and I wanted to get out of there. I could hear him in the distance yelling in this weird sound that could have been a laugh or a cry. I scrambled up the trail and I arrived at my truck breathless. I tossed my gear into the back of the truck, but I kept my rifle in the seat next to me and sped off. For the longest time, I told that story from the perspective of having spotted some deranged crackhead living off the land. I reported it to Fish and Game, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone, and I never received an update. It wasn't until I told this story at a camping trip that my nephew told me about wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. And this story terrified him so much that his mum had to come and pick him up. So, yeah. So I've lived on my own for about 2 years now. I have a very small bungalow that I'm pretty easily able to afford. In this bungalow, I have an attic area. It's about 5 by 5 meters, and you can only really stand in the middle of it. Anyways, I work a night shift, so I'm usually home by 8 AM. I was coming home last Thursday, and it was a heavy thunderstorm, so as soon as I got inside, I just went straight to sleep. When I woke up, I checked my phone, and I realized I was so tired, I didn't even check my notifications. I have a Ring camera outside of my door, so I'm notified anytime someone comes to my door. I saw that it had been tripped at 7:42 AM, about 20 minutes before I came home. I checked the video and I saw that it was a man. He was pressed right up to the door and he was fumbling with the handle. He did this for about 10 seconds and then he spotted the camera and he quickly ran away. This was unsettling to watch, but it didn't fully freak me out, so I headed to the kitchen and made myself some food. That's when I realized the back window was open. Wide open. I instantly had thoughts that it was a home intruder, but I tried to calm myself down and I tried to convince myself I just left it open yesterday. The rest of the day consisted of this, seeing small things out of place like a cup being moved or a door open that I thought was closed. And I thought I was just scaring myself, it should be nothing. But I got to a point where I was watching TV at 9 PM and I had a shift starting at 10. I spotted something that made my heart leap into my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see it. My attic entrance was slowly being slid open. I can so vividly remember that I began questioning my sanity. Surely I was just hallucinating or something. I looked over at it and absolutely saw something that made me so much more scared. I saw fingers wrap around the hatch and begin moving it more. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the panic beginning to really get to me and I wasn't sure if I should leave the house and call the police or if I should try and yell at whoever was there. I chose a mixture of both. I began dialing 999 and ran to my bedroom where I could lock the door. As soon as I began running, I heard the hatch get almost teared off with the speed they moved it, and I arrived at my bedroom door. I looked down the corridor and watched for a second, seeing only a little slice of the blackness up in my attic. And I saw the human hand still holding onto the sides of my ceiling. I yelled, "Whoever is there, I'm calling the police and I have a gun." I didn't have a gun. "If you take a step out there, I'll fucking shoot you." The adrenaline was really making my hands and voice shake, but I tried sounding as tough as I could. Then I saw something that I truly do not think I will ever forget. The hand slipped back into the dark, and then he dropped down. I slammed my door shut and locked it as quickly as I could. The call went through and I was able to get on a line with the police and they dispatched officers to my house. I told them I didn't know if the man was armed or not and the dispatcher told me stay on the line. I heard the man walking up to my door and rattling the door handle. He also went through my cupboards in my kitchen as I heard a lot of commotion in there. Truth be told, I don't know why he stayed. I would have left, but he stayed right up until the police came and arrested him. Apparently he was a homeless man and he was armed with a knife from my kitchen. He'd been seen in the area trying to get into other houses as well. I'm very frightened to sleep still. Now I lock every door and make sure every window is closed. I also sleep with a knife under my pillow. I know it's unlikely that this will ever happen again, but I can still never get that image out of my head of him jumping out from the attic. My name is Ben and I live in Australia. In the southeast of Australia lies the state of Victoria, and in that state lies the High Country, an extremely vast and remote expanse of alpine mountains and valleys that's largely only accessible with four-wheel drives, and it can take days to get in and out. The place is popular with four-wheel drivers, deer hunters and hikers. We four-wheel drive, and this was the destination chosen to go camping for a few days with my partner Jess. Some time away from the world, beyond the reach of mobile phones. The four-wheel drive was loaded up, lists double-checked, vehicle maintenance done, fuel loaded into the roof tracks, and off we went. We were headed to a place called the Woonongata Valley. Towards the end of the first full day of driving, we finally made our way down the last track for the day, skirting the ridge and arriving at the valley floor as the sun dipped below the mountains. We found a secluded spot to pitch our tent, nestled in amongst the eucalypt trees by the riverbank. It was midweek and off-season, so we were the only ones in the valley. Well, that we knew of. After setting up camp and having a meal by the fire as the sun went down, we snuggled together in our sleeping bags, and in short order we decided to hit the hay. But at some point in the night, I woke to a loud noise. I wasn't quite sure what I heard, so from inside our tent I listened. Nothing. I must be going mad. No sooner had I thought it, I heard another noise. It sounded like something falling off of our camp table and hitting the ground. I put it down to possums or wombats moving about. Common in the area and nothing to worry about. I should have packed up after dinner, I thought, and then I went back to sleep. Sunrise came and we slowly woke up. Needing to pee, I opened the tent and jumped out. Looking around, something just came over me. A chill. It wasn't the way we'd left it. Instead of seeing two chairs together by the fire, one of them was by the table, and on the table was a loaf of bread that I swear I packed away last night. I walked over to the table to inspect. A half-eaten piece of bread was sitting there, with very obvious chomp marks taken out of it. I flung the tent open and asked, "Were you up before me? Did you have some bread?" No was the answer. Jess got up and together we went through all of our stuff, but nothing was missing. As we went to check the four-wheel drive, I noticed the footprints. There was a bunch of them around the front of the car, where the hood was. Most of the camp was covered in grass. This was one of only a few spots that was just dirt. Had someone tried to open it? Very distinct footprints, not mine or my partner's. Perhaps they'd already been there? These camping spots are used intermittently, and obviously we weren't looking at the ground when we arrived the night before, because the sun was setting. I don't think either of us wanted to actually admit what we were both thinking. That someone had been creeping about our campsite at night, far from civilization. We discussed if a possum could have made the bite marks, argued about if one of us had left the bread out, and we eventually discussed moving on and camping somewhere else. After much deliberation, we decided to stay. I had the rifle in my four-wheel drive, which I guess gave me an overinflated sense of safety, which in hindsight was a very poor choice. As the day rolled on, the sun shining and with nothing eventful happening, I decided to walk across the valley floor. I walked about 800 meters to an old ruin of an isolated homestead. It was built by settlers who ran cattle in the valley about 100 years ago. It's steeped in mystery. There's an old unsolved multiple murder from 1917 that always captivates people. I read the plaque, took some photos, and started wandering back to the camp. As I neared the halfway mark back to camp, I noticed Jess walking across the field towards me. Must have gotten bored, I thought. But as she approached, it was clear she was in a panic. Immediately she started to tell me how she went down to the riverbank to wash the pots and pans, and as she looked up, she saw someone over on the other side of the river. watching her from deep in the bush. I had no reason whatsoever not to believe her. I asked what he looked like and got told he was an old man, 70s or so, scraggly looking and in old tattered clothes. Apparently the second she looked up, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the bush. I couldn't comprehend it. How was anyone out here without a four-wheel drive or a dirt bike? And how would anyone get to that side of the bank without first crossing over from our side? There's days worth of damn near impossible to walk through bush on the other side just to get where my partner saw him. We decided to jump in the four-wheel drive and drive along the length of the valley, checking the dozen or so riverside camping spots as we went. I wanted to spot a camp, have my partner ID the guy, and make sure he wasn't creeping, with our theory being that he may have been a hunter off in the bush after a deer. After making our way up and down the valley and not seeing anything, we drove back to camp at a loss to explain anything that happened. As the sun started to set with my partner and I quite shaken, I grabbed the rifle and set it next to us as we cooked dinner and chatted. We had a few drinks to settle the nerves. Had we been spooked? Was it just that there's a lot of mystery surrounding the valley and the homestead murders? We talked a bit and settled into a good foot warming in front of the fire. At some point Jess needed to go to the toilet. I was asked to come with her to the spot behind a tree where we placed the portable toilet. It was about 50 meters from our camp, and considering everything that had gone on, it was a no-brainer. Jess did her business and we turned around and came around the side of the tree, and that's when we saw him. Standing at our camp, about a meter from the rifle I had sitting against the table, was a man. Old, scraggly looking, tattered old clothes. It was him. Jess squeezed my arm so hard I thought it was going to come off. Everything about her body language screamed, "This is the same man." As we got closer, I could make out more odd things about him. He had part of a deer antler in his hand that looked like he'd been whittling away at it, and what looked like antler pieces carved to plug large holes in his ears. Like stretchers, but made of bone. Same goes for the bone-looking buttons on his ratty old coat. He wore old leather shoes that looked homemade. "G'day, mate," he said. "Fuck me, mate, you gave us a fucking heart attack," I said, shitting bricks. "Where have you come from, mate? Everything alright?" "Oh, just over yonder. You lot aren't hunting around here, are ya?" he said as he was looking directly at the rifle. "We might, yeah, why?" "Nah, there's no hunting around here. Not enough deer as it is." "Well, we hadn't decided on it, probably gonna pack up anyway," I said as I edged my way towards the rifle. "I should put this away anyway, didn't mean to spook you, mate." I said that, but I was just looking for an excuse to get that rifle into my hands. "Nah, it's all good. Guns don't spook me." And yeah, I didn't imagine guns would scare him. I picked the rifle up by the barrel and held it like a walking stick, in an attempt to be non-confrontational, breathing a sigh of relief. "No offense, but you caught us by a bit of a surprise. You gotta be the only one we've seen since we got here." "Yeah, I saw you come in last night. I've been coming up here for 40 years. Beautiful spot, isn't it? Takes a bit to get down into the valley, hey?" "Yeah, mate, look, no offense, but we're gonna hit the sack soon. Do you need a lift back to your camp?" "Nah, all good. Just out for a wander before I tuck in for the night. Saw the fire and I thought I'd say g'day. Anyway, I better be on my way." With that, he turned and walked off, parallel to the river, into the dark, no torch. That was officially enough to spook us beyond any ability to calm down, and we decided to pack up in the dark and head out. Even if driving in the dark was a monumentally stupid idea in this part of the country, we got into the four-wheel drive and drove out. Taking us along the valley floor, we didn't see a single fire, a camp, a vehicle. There was nothing. Halfway home, Jess, bored from the drive, flipped on the camera. There was no memory card in there. What the hell? After getting home and telling a few people what happened, a friend's dad, an avid bushman himself, was the one to officially freak us the hell out. "Oh, you met the Button Man." "The what?" I said. "The Button Man. He's an old bushman who goes out into the high country for months at a time, hunts with a spear, appears out of nowhere, scares people, has button made out of bone. There's a heap of people gone missing up that way. The cops keep looking but can't find a single trace. One camp was found burnt to the ground and a car left abandoned. Quick Google confirmed it. The missing people, the Button Man, the lack of evidence. Police set out into the bush and found his camp. Spoke with the man, but have nothing else to go on. We don't camp that valley anymore. Hell, we don't even camp that side of the high country anymore. Anyway, that's our story of how we met the Button Man. those were all the encounters that I have for you today. Let me know what you think. Also, paranormal video next if anyone watched this the whole way. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. See ya.